We're here today with Commissioner Penny Schwinn. Commissioner Schwinn is our 41st Commissioner of Education in the state of Tennessee. She is a friend, but more importantly, she's in charge of public education in the state. So today she's going to tell us a little bit about who she is, what she does, and some thoughts about what's going on in education in our state. And Commissioner, I have a few questions for you. So first off, tell me a little bit, Commissioner, about who Penny Schwinn is, and just tell the audience who you are.
So, first and foremost, I am the daughter of an educator. And I think when I consider why I'm in this profession and why I care so deeply about it, it's because I was very privileged to have a mom who, from 6 weeks old, taught me what it meant to be a teacher. She had me in her classroom. She said, I've got 2 little girls at home, but I've got 30 kids in my classroom that are also my babies. And so when I think about my job, it is treating all of the kids, almost 1 million students in the state of Tennessee, as I hope my girls are treated in their schools. So it's a great privilege, but I am a mom, I am a teacher, a lifelong teacher, and just someone who is very, very proud to represent Tennessee.
Awesome. So the second question I had is as you know, Tennessee, and in our research we found that 82% of the teachers in Tennessee are female, which is a significant number.
Yep.
I mean, it's like 80% in some states, 78% in other states, but it's pretty significant in Tennessee.
Yeah.
So 82% are female. And I know balancing life and career, difficult challenges, both for you and for, for our teachers. And so the question I had for you, what do you do for fun?
Yeah.
What, and maybe something that our teachers might want to know about.
Yeah, so I'm the proud parent. I've got 2 little girls. They're 7 and 4, Eleanor and Abigail, Ellie and Abby. And my husband's also in education. So the balance is really hard, especially with a job like this, because I do feel strongly that I am responsible for 1 million kids. Everywhere I go, I see a child that I feel like I'm responsible for in some way, shape, or form. And so fun for me, honestly, right now is getting into classrooms. I know that sounds, it still sounds like work, but when you're in Nashville and you're in this kind of government building, pushing papers and trying to do the right thing for kids, you can't do that if you're not actually seeing what's happening in classrooms. And so the team will say you look the happiest and the most joyful when you're hula hooping in East Tennessee, or doing hopscotch, or doing a literacy lesson, or phonics with shaving cream. But outside of work, I like to spend time with my girls. We love to watch Ellie play soccer. Abby's a dancer. She's a ballerina, future princess, she says. So seeing the girls grow up, getting to travel with them, play sports, be outside it's a dream.
Well, I think one of the things that connected you and I early on, you just have a passion for education and children's issues. Every time you go out, or you and I correspond and talk, we talk a lot, but when you talk and everything, for you, it's always, you bring it back to children and to teachers, but you're always focused on education.
That's right.
And I appreciate that. And so my question to you is, what drew you into that field? Obviously you were born into it, but some people run from it.
Yeah, that's right. We got to bring them back. I think, I've been very lucky. Like I said, my mom's a teacher. She was a single parent for a lot of me growing up, but my uncles, my aunts, everyone, they're teachers. My sister's a teacher. We both married teachers. Our cousins are teachers. And I feel like if you care deeply about children, and frankly, if you care deeply about your community, there's no greater profession. There's no harder profession either. It was the hardest job I've ever had, was trying to be a really good teacher for my kids. And I think what drew me into it is I wanted to make change in the community where I grew up, which is kind of right outside of Sacramento, California. I wanted to make change for all the students that I met, and I had continued to meet across the country and now here in Tennessee. And I care deeply about making sure that every single kid has the opportunity to achieve their dreams. And I was very lucky to have a family who supported me in that, in some bad times and some really good times. My mom was very lucky to have a family like that, and my dad did not, and didn't have the same opportunities. And I have a lot of students who didn't have those opportunities. And so what a privilege to be able to say, I've got this number of kids for this year and this time period. I get to help them be whoever they want to be. That's a superpower.
Yeah, and I want to circle back a little bit. Single parent homes are something I'm real concerned about. And on a personal basis, I have grandchildren and it's being raised in a single parent home. Yeah. And I know a lot of our teachers, maybe single parents, and more importantly, a lot of students today are single parents. So it's a challenge for that. I want to thank you for being so passionate about that and not being afraid to address it.
It's real. And I think, it's hard. I think when I think about my mom raising 2 kids on a teacher's salary by herself and some of the challenges and wanting to be there for her kids and for her daughters, it's hard to make ends meet sometimes. It's hard to think about how do you be everything to everyone. And I am in awe of what our teachers do every day because I lived it as a child of a teacher, and I know how hard my mom worked because she cared so deeply about the work. And I don't know how you see that and not want to be a part of it. So I appreciate all of our educators out there who are doing the same thing for our kids. It matters.
I appreciate you. So let's go back to you're now, as I said, the 41st Commissioner of Education. And, that means a lot of praise. I mean, you get anything goes right, you get credit. Mm-hmm. Everything that goes wrong, you get blamed. So no matter what it is, right. It's the credit and the blame, it falls upon your shoulders. And so for good or for bad. Mm-hmm. So the question is being Commissioner of Education what you expected? And, and do you enjoy it?
So I love it. I wish that the praise should go to the team who's doing the work in the department and very frankly the people in the districts who are with our kids every day. They deserve the praise. I should not get any of it. And I think that being commissioner is a really big responsibility. It is a life choice. And I think the hardest part about the job is literally like if I'm going to the movies or I'm going to the store or I'm driving down the highway and I see students that I think are somewhere between 4 and 20 years old, there is a responsibility that I have to that family to do right by them. And I carry that with me every waking hour. I dream about it. Yeah, right. But it is the hardest job I had was being a teacher. I will say my favorite job I think was being a principal because I got to work with teachers and kids and some of our naughty little kids, which are, everyone has their favorites. I loved the naughty little kindergartners who would hide and we call them runners, the first runner of the year who tried to escape. I always loved that, but I think this job is one where I feel like if I do it right and I make it about teachers and students, because there's nothing else. It is just about the kids we serve and the teachers who serve them. Then we can actually change the conversation, elevate the profession, and make it about what we know it is, and that is making sure we are building the healthiest, strongest communities possible and raising our kids well.
Well, and I think if we have those community conversations about raising that conversation about students and teachers, I really believe that we will make our profession attractive and want people to come into it, but more importantly, we will change the landscape for kids.
That's right.
So I want to do that. So appreciate you for that. We've made quite a few changes in education in Tennessee, some questionable, some needed, some debatable. Here's the question I always ask. I turn it around. Teachers are always told, and public education is always told what they're doing wrong. Right. So the question is, what are we doing right?
A lot. And I one of the things I'm so excited about is I get to talk about it. And I think we don't talk about it enough. And it's something we heard in the educator survey, we hear a lot. And so something that is uniquely Tennessee, and I talk about that a lot since I'm new and earning my stripes as a Tennessean. So first and foremost is this is a state that's about family. And Tennessee teachers talk about their kids as if they are family. That is something that I think we don't talk enough about. And as a parent of a child in our public schools, that matters deeply to me. But I think secondly is this is a state where our educators, they want to get better. They're talking about continuous improvement. They're talking about how to do right and more for their kids. It's unlike anywhere I've ever worked, and we are seeing a lot of the results. Our math results are up. We're seeing more and more programs that are supporting our students in a very, very different way. But the mindset and the culture around treating our schools like family, there's something about that it's not maybe tangible, but it is very, very special.
Well, and I'll throw in, since an old history teacher, me, we're a lot of Scots-Irish, and for that part of it, Tennessee was founded by that, but a lot of the Scots-Irish who came here, and that's it. I mean, it is a wonderful trait. I mean, it can also make us standoffish, and I know that one of the things I liked about you is that you didn't care, you just plodded in. You day one, and I think I was one of your first people that you met with in the state, and I liked it. You just came straight in, and it was just straight to the punch. And we started talking about kids and teachers, and so I appreciate you for that. Now here's the big thing. I know that you've just undergone the strategic thing, and you're going to be rolling that out in the next couple of weeks. Strategic plan, and it's going to be going. And I ask this of everybody, so that's my thing, because it's where I learn myself. And so I got to ask you, what are the 3 greatest challenges facing Tennessee in education?
Gosh, so I'm gonna in our data. I think our strategic plan is really built on the data and trying to support the area. So first and foremost, we've got to elevate the profession of teaching. I think the biggest risk that I see to our public education system is the way we talk about teachers and what we are not doing for our teachers. And so a big part of our plan, an entire pillar, and frankly a lot of where we're putting our big asks is around elevating the profession, compensating the profession, supporting the profession, and giving teachers what they need to do what they do best. I'm very concerned about the rhetoric around the profession. And so ideally, we would like to completely shift and say that being a teacher isn't just a noble profession, it is a great one. And ideally that we can say it's one that supports the families. I think that is the biggest concern I have. And second is what I've heard from the educator survey, and that's around mental health and whole child. We see an uptick in students who bring firearms to school, more bullying, more suicides than ever before. Addiction in communities is really entering into the classrooms, and it's making it hard as a teacher to serve the academic needs, but also the non-academic needs of our kids. And we've got to do better because our teachers have got to be able to teach and not to be the social workers and the counselors and the police officers and the parents. I'm very concerned about that, and I think our kids need more, and it can't just fall on the one person in the classroom. It has to be everybody coming together, and so we're gonna be putting some big bets there too.
Good.
Yeah.
So the and we address it. How would you've identified that? I bring it back home. How will that impact? And I know that you and I've had this conversation. Almost every time we talk, we talk about salary.
Yes,
and,
that's right.
And that's one of our big things. And I know that from you, and I know talking to Governor Lee's people, but particularly through you and on your effort, and you need the credit for that part of it. And I know credits, whatever, but you are going to promote. I mean, you're really going to push for strong teacher increases in salary.
Yes.
And it's going to continue, and we want to make sure it reaches the teachers.
That's right. And I think, the hard conversation is that there was a 2.5% increase, but if we don't tie that and say that has to go to the pockets of the people in the classrooms, then we can't say that it was a 2.5% increase. And so if we're going to be competitive, if we're going to treat teachers like the professionals and leaders that they are, and the work that they're doing to build our economy, our state, and our communities, we have to compensate them accordingly. And so our strategic plan, it is about teachers, because teachers are about kids. And so what you will see when we get to release the details in just a couple of weeks is that this is a plan that's saying we're making Tennessee the place in the country to become and remain a teacher, period. And that's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of resources. But I do believe, especially under this governor, and I think with the number of supports, and I think you've been such an important voice in that, in helping to move this along, right. That Tennessee is going to be the only place in the country anyone could possibly want to teach. That is my goal, and that teachers feel like we have their back, because we do, but we have to show it. It can't just be words.
And I appreciate that, and so thank you for that part of it. Now I want to get into. You and I both spent time in the classroom, and that was part of the effort. And we hear a lot from a lot of classroom teachers and everything else. A lot of legislators and policymakers have never spent a day in that. I had people who critical of public schools. I've had people that are elected officials critical of public schools, and I always tell them one thing: spend a day there. Yeah. Have you substituted? Have you spent a day in the classroom? So going back to that. The number one issue and we're doing our survey this year. Number one issue last year was classroom discipline. Yep. The second issue was school culture, which I could turn out. The main thing with school culture is they don't feel welcomed into the school. Yeah. But in the school discipline, and it came up that what can the state do to help with tracking student discipline issues? There's an idea afloat that's out there that any time that there's a referrals made, or whatever, that somehow the state's tracking that. But more importantly, I understand one or two kids may have behavior issues and documented behavior issues, and we deal 45 minutes out of a school day with that child, and it's taken away from time. But what about the kids that are having their time lost? Yep. And actually, how many minutes are actually lost on student issues, student discipline issues? Is there anything you can think of that we could do here?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple things. So I think going back to even just having the awareness at school, it's not the same as it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. And I think about my time, I was in elementary schools that were priority and focus schools, and then my mom moved us and I went to the best schools in the state of California, and very, very different experiences. And teachers are facing different experiences. So the data is critical to be able to show for those folks who haven't been in the classroom, either for a while or ever, to be able to say, look, you might not have the experience of being in the classroom every day and that first day of school where your legs are a little weak because you're not used to standing and you get a little sick and all the things that happen. But here's what the data is saying about the number of minutes that this teacher is spending on these issues versus academic instruction. How many minutes the principal is spending with behavior issues as opposed to being able to support and coach teachers. That data and a number of different data points is going to be critical for the state to be able to back some of the requests we're making, whether it's funding and resources, policy changes. Otherwise, it's just anecdotes and stories, and that doesn't necessarily get it done. So a couple of things that we're doing at the state. So number one is we're going to be starting a program in the coming year, so in the 2020-21 school year, that frankly says we've got a number of people here who've never been in the classroom or haven't been in the classroom for a while. So let's get them in the classroom on a sabbatical. Let's get them in the classroom or shadowing for maybe 1 hour every morning for the entire year of a principal, or being an assistant teacher and supporting, to understand what it feels like every day, to make better decisions for teachers and kids. Number two, we're having active conversations about data tracking, specifically how do we build a system where that information will come in, where we can give kids access to mental health supports. And frankly, an idea that we have is working with the commissioner over mental health and substance abuse to say, she has a number of services that can go immediately into schools, but those data systems have to talk to each other. So it's collecting new data, but it's also making sure the systems talk to one another so that it's not the teacher dealing with potential issues that are coming up, but being able to say, I have a child in crisis. I can call this number and someone will be in my school ready to help that student on the same day. So I think there's a lot of, those are kind of two big programs we're working on.
Yeah, that was a lot like 9/11. The number one complaint was that law enforcement wasn't talking to each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things in government, it doesn't talk to each
That's
other.
right.
And so a lot of kids either get, by virtue of falling through the cracks, through their parents or whatever. So I'm glad to hear that. And of course, we'll be supportive of that. One of the things I know that, one of my probably most requested items, I came home last night, had 2 texts to it on testing. So, we're going to be, where are we at on testing? I'm just going to ask it like that. And I know we're getting a new vendor, and, can I get an update?
Testing. So a couple things. So we do have a new vendor for the administration. The vendor's Pearson. I think Pearson has a nationally known reputation for being able to get tests done. It will be paper pencil this year. I think that was a little bit hard. I will say it hurt my heart a little bit to do it, but the idea is that we need to learn the lesson of a new vendor needs time to set up and be ready. So let's do that. And then we'll go back online after this coming year. We're working very closely with Pearson. They are at schedule or ahead of schedule in all of the metrics. We've got a lot of redundancy set up. I'm really excited about that. And we have a new RFP that's going to go out around item development. So that'll be the actual content of the tests. What I'm really excited about for that is that we're asking for more items to be developed. We're having more teachers review the items and be part of that review process than ever before. And it's going to allow us to build formative and interim assessments fully free to districts so that they're able to see the actual items and use them for practice and in instruction, because assessment can't be a gotcha. It can't be a one and done on one day. People need, it shouldn't be a surprise. And we need to do a better job at the state of making it much more transparent. Publishing the test, in a perfect world for me, would be publishing every test every year so that teachers can say, look, every year I knock it out of the park on these standards, and here are a couple where, for whatever reason, like my kids aren't doing as well. Let me look at what were they getting right and wrong, and how can I improve my own practice. That's our job at the state. It's one of our responsibilities. So I'm excited about new vendors being able to do that.
And that's common sense. And that was the other question. I have teachers that, how can I get involved? That's the big thing. And a couple of things. I mean, certainly we have teachers that want to get involved in that, in particular areas, math and English. We get a lot of volunteers. Yeah. And so certainly willing to do that. And then finally, I guess there's 25 questions we could talk. And you and I, we talk regularly, and we talk about different issues and whatever is pertinent. But share with educators just anything that we didn't cover? I mean, what is it that you feel like that you would say directly to them and quell any rumors or any? I mean, it takes about a second for it to get on Facebook, and we're dealing with it. So,
I think what I would say, and the thing that someone asked me this on maybe my first or second day, but it was a really direct question. It was like, what are you about? And I think at the end of the day, whenever I hope to be in this job for as long as humanly possible. I really love it and want to do right by kids. But I think that this is a job that has to be about children and it has to be about educators. And if anyone needs to know anything about me, it's to know I'm the daughter of a public school teacher. I identify as a public school teacher. My kids go to public school. And I believe deeply in the impact and the power of this work. And one of the things, we've talked a lot about my older daughter. My younger daughter, I will give credit to. She's wonderful and wants to be a princess and probably will be famous and wonderful someday.
Hollywood Beckett.
Yeah, and she is ready in all of her high-heeled glory at 4. And my older daughter, who's adopted, I talk a lot about her because I think there's a commitment that my husband and I made when she came into our family about doing right by her, loving her as if she were our biological child, but more importantly, giving her opportunities that she might not otherwise have had. And we're very lucky to to have Sam, her birth mom, be such an important part of our life. But when I think about our responsibility as public school teachers, as public school officials, it's about knowing that the promise that I make to my daughter and her birth mom was to say, you are my child, and I'm given the great responsibility and privilege of being your mother, in the same way that our parents drop off kids every day at our schools, and we take them in and say, I have the great privilege of being your teacher. And that is a promise that we make, and I believe in that. There's a picture of my daughter and my old students in my office, and there's one in my home. And every day I look at those pictures and remember the promise that we make to our families. So I'm not always going to make the right decision. I'm certainly not going to make perfect decisions, but I would want people to know that every day I make decisions for kids, and I'm doing the best that I can to ensure that all of our kids get a shot. And I welcome the feedback. I welcome the criticism, if it makes me better. And I think keep an open mind that if we make a bad decision, we can always make it right. And if we make a good decision, let's build on those. But at the end of the day, it has got to be about our kids. And that is all that matters to me. Every decision is about them.
That's awesome. Thank you, Commissioner, for your time.
Appreciate
your time.
Thank you.